Are we on the internet? Oh, we are live. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the Bot Lobby podcast. We are live on the internet for the first time in a while because we have some very exciting news. My name is Grandmaster Gojj.
Things to talk about at all,
Okay,
Gojj,
all right.
which is very exciting.
You ruined my intro, Katie, again. It's crazy.
I'm
Sometimes.
Katie Bedford, the best co-host. How am I doing? I'm doing great, Gojj. How are you?
Good. I'm doing well as well. Here's the thing, Katie. We've got a lot to talk about because season 2 has dropped on Warzone 2.0. And we haven't talked in a while because there hasn't been anything to talk about. Let's be very clear. This podcast, near and dear to our hearts, there has been nothing going on for the last 3 months this game's been out competitively, and until now. So excited to be here. We went through a ton of interviews. You can go check them out on our channel. What's exciting, though, before we get into all of that, and since we don't have anybody else to intro, we can intro the fact that, Katie, we are live on YouTube right now as well. So directly on our YouTube channel, if you're watching this live, fantastic. Good to see you. If you're on Twitch, great. If you're just listening to us via Twitter, I hope you have a great day as well, because we've got a lot to talk about. Now, we said we've had a lot to talk about 12 times already, Katie. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Because tonight or this evening or this morning, wherever you are, maybe it's an afternoon for you. Season 2 has dropped and everything has changed. I mean, it feels like I'm in Avatar, right? And the Fire Nation just attacked, because there's like a whole new game that everybody's playing right now, Katie, from a competitive standpoint, but also just general pubs as a casual.
Yeah, I mean, season 2 for Warzone, I think the major question we have is, will it refresh the game? You can look at a lot of things like player retention rates, player drop-off rates compared to Warzone 1, where Warzone 2 is lagging behind. But so far, it seems like everyone pretty excited about this. And there's a couple reasons why, right? There's some pretty big bombshells that we'll get into that are occurring here. But much needed, because as you said, it's been months of the game being out. And from a competitive standpoint, there's just been a pretty significant drought. And not only that, but a lot of, I think, TOs and production companies that want to put these on have not felt a reason to do so. And it's kind of compounding all within each other. Budget issues, lack of interest, etc. So that's kind of scary to see at the very beginning of the launch of essentially a new game. So I'm hoping season 2 kind of helps propel it back to a healthier state.
Yeah, that's a great intro for what we're going to talk about. Now, there's a lot in the patch notes, and we're not going to go through all of it. To be honest, there's a ton of people that have gone through the patch notes. You probably have already read the patch notes, so you know what we're going to talk about. So we're going to be talking about everything inside of specifically like the competitive scene and why these things will change the competitive scene. But Katie, I mean, let's kind of walk through just the brief kind of major updates that came through. Movement is a lot better. You can sprint while you're plating now. The movement in general just seems weirdly sped up across the board. But even that one small change dynamically changes the way that everybody will be playing the game and theoretically the survivability in said game.
Yeah, I think you saw Modern Warzone tweeted it out, like a direct one-to-one comparison of season 1 versus season 2 in just plating speed as well, and it is noticeably, dramatically faster plating speed, which is also that's been a pain point for people for a long time. It's always felt like in Warzone 2, when you plate, you are at your most vulnerable because you couldn't sprint. It was extremely slow, and given the nature of the game and the TTK on top of that, you would just get caught out or basically never have the ability to get those plates in while you're in kind of a chaotic gunfight. On top of that, there were some nerfs that helped some things, but didn't really cover a lot of things. Like the auto akimbos were nerfed, but others were left alone. On top of that, LMGs still seem to be extremely strong. There is a new AR, the ISO Hemlock, that I think we saw people tweet now is potentially viable. But the one thing on top of that plates that you mentioned from these patch notes that, again, people will be familiar with, that I think, at least competitively as well, is a great upgrade across the board, but I know has been something that is very frustrating to competitive players, is it's no longer 2 hits on a down, right? If a melee attack with non-melee weapon, so if you're using your fists, whatever, your gun, it's 3 full hits onto a fully plated person to down them now, instead of the 2, which just felt ridiculously OP before. So I think that's another excellent adjustment that moves the game into a healthier direction.
Well, yeah, and then of course all the looting changes too that are worth mentioning. Now I think people are calling it the vomiting of loot. Vomiting of loot now occurs across the map. So when you kill somebody, their loot vomits all over the place. When you open up a box, it vomits all over the place, which is speeding up the game by a dramatic amount because looting is what slowed it down so much. Now there are some people that liked that style of looting, of course, but in terms of like the competitive scene that we know and love, this is what everybody wants anyway. So it definitely dynamically changed that. Backpacks are not lootable anymore. Everybody has the same size backpack across the board. So all big changes. But I think there's a lot, and that's all worth talking about. But there's also like a lot between the lines that we need to talk about from the competitive scene, as well as the fact that we've got a brand new map. I mean, this is the big talking point. Ashika Island, or otherwise known as, I think it's Asika, I think is how you technically pronounce it. Doesn't matter. I'm going to call it Ashika.
Can you give us a couple variations just so we can listen to you try?
No, okay. We're going to get demonetized in about 3 seconds as I go through those variations. But this map is, it's incredible, to be honest. 52 total players on this Resurgence map. It is a Resurgence map. It's a sizable amount bigger than Rebirth Island, but it's fantastic. The flow of it is amazing. The biggest complaint about it, like really the only complaint about it, was the lack of plates, and they hotfixed that within 24 hours. So they added in...
that's great to hear.
Yeah, because they added in anytime you kill somebody, they will drop at least 1 plate, of course, along with all the other plates they have on them. So like it's been incredibly well received, which is honestly surprising given that I don't think anything has ever been well received when it comes to Call of Duty or Warzone updates. So I'm impressed with the map, and I'm impressed with how it plays. It's very chaotic as people are learning it, but overall Resurgence was needed, not only for, like, I think competitive Resurgence is a lot of fun, but just for the casual scene, like casual players are like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I can actually have fun on this game again, because the skill gap being as low as it is right now, on the main map, it's just camper city and people are not having a blast. And so people that want to have a more casual experience, Ashika Island or otherwise, is exactly what you need.
Yeah, and I think also the confirmation of Warzone Ranked at some point is a massive, massive part of this as well. We have been, I mean, Ranked used to be a staple on launch. It hasn't been for a while. And now, you already have Ranked in multiplayer. I've seen a lot of Warzone folks that we know grinding out their ranks there. But the fact that we have it confirmed coming to Warzone as well is huge, because a lot of these competitive players, and even if you're not a competitive player, want to feel like there is a purpose in the games. Like, yes, you're getting on to play with friends or play solo and just have fun or whatever. But when you have that rank delineation that you can jump into, that gives you a sense of purpose and motivation and drive in each game, like you're getting on because you want to try and get to X or get into the top, whatever. I think that is great, because it adds another continuous incentive to keep playing this game. And I think that's something that it's lacked as well, is just what are those continuous incentives? What happens when you finish the battle pass, or you have all your guns, max camos, XYZ, you've won 1 million games. Well, now you have Ranked that gives you actual challenges and kind of competitive motivation to keep playing.
Yeah, and I think that's the big point. We're moving quickly here because we've got some big topics we want to spend a lot of time on, considering this is mostly competitive focused. If you want to learn more about Ashika Island or some of the other fixes that came through Season 2, check out some of our friends like Gojj and otherwise. But yeah, Ranked is going to be a big deal. Ranked was leaked in those patch notes, Katie. Not really leaked, I guess teased. It was saying, hey, Ranked's coming. That's essentially all that was said. There's a lot of question marks up in the air for those that, aren't working behind the scenes, of course, of like how it's actually going to work. Who will be affected by it? How can you advance? Will it be close to Apex and the way Apex's ranked system work? Will it be closer to Fortnite with their competitive type scene? Nobody really knows, obviously, unless you're behind the scenes. So it's an exciting conversation to have, is like, hey, will I start seeing payoff? Will I start be able to grind this game for, quote unquote, a reason? Or will it just be kind of another playlist that feels a little bit different? Hopefully, of course, it's the former. Now, the other thing to talk about with Ranked is, like, there are some people, if you remember, Katie, like we've done 1,000 interviews with people on this podcast, and I think we've technically like 32 or something like that. And 90% of the people were like, give me Ranked, give me Ranked, give me Ranked. But there was one person that said, do not give me Ranked. I don't want it. Not in the state that Warzone was in. Now, this was during Caldera, but it was Joe. I have a tweet pulled up from Joe once Ranked was actually announced. Pulled it up here. Joe said, Ranked Warzone with a minimal skill gap will be interesting to say the least, but at least it's something to grind for. Can't wait for the bot lobby comments to go away from the Hearthstone Silvers. Now, classic, that's our podcast name. But this is something that's, actually really important to talk about, is that ranked is going to be really weird on this map in particular, because Joe was saying this exact same comment on Caldera, where there was minimal skill gap in his mind. On this map, and the way the mechanics work on this map, the skill gap seems even smaller in terms of, between quote unquote pros versus Joes. And so something like a ranked mode may be very difficult to balance with this pros versus Joe concept, being that gap is very minimal. And not to go on a long rambling tirade, Katie, and you can cut me off here, but when we start talking about this minimal skill gap, what do we actually mean? Because I see somebody in chat asking about it. The minimal skill gap is an interesting conversation because it's not necessarily like you can't tell somebody is better than the other. That is still obvious. I think what Trey said in the chat about like these pros are frying for nukes all the time and a casual player can't do that often. That's obvious. If you compare their skill on paper separate lobbies, that's exactly, it's very easy to see. But the difference is that a pro can be killed in game by a Joe with fairly minimal effort, as long as they're holding a sight line or they see the person first. There's no real outplay potential. If you get spotted first, you're going to die first unless they have absolute garbage aim, because the TTK is so incredibly fast, time to kill. That's what we mean by minimal skill gap. There are ways to outplay your opponents. There are ways to strategically set yourself up for success, but you're still going to get killed when you don't have all the information possible with relative ease by somebody that's not as good. If you compare it with something like Apex, for example, which has a very large skill gap, and in all reality, you could get shot by a team that's way worse than you, probably by 3 people that are way worse than you, and you'll probably win that 1v3 if you're a much better player, like 9 times out of 10, just because the TTK is so incredibly low, especially if you're doing good resource management. So that's the conversation. It's not just, are they better or worse than me? It's how does that actually reflect itself on the map?
Oh, and it can feel very frustrating to those higher skill players, because what causes that skill gap, that minimal skill gap, as you've explained so well, is environmental and baked in game mechanics that level that playing field, as opposed to, someone actually being good enough to kill Joe or whoever else. It's like, well, if you have a blisteringly fast TTK, this has now been improved in the season sprint while you were plating. You played it extremely slowly. You're moving slowly in general. As I mentioned, compounded with that fast TTK, you don't have the potential to simply just get away from someone. If you get caught out for even a second, you have bomb drones. You have so many different things in the game that inherently make it difficult for players who are more talented or are more skilled to have that reflect in fair gunfights for them. Now, if you're the worst player, it's all going to feel more fair for you, because, well, yeah, you're taking them down Joe or whatever, cool. But realistically, if it's a one-on-one, if you're in Warzone 2 or Warzone 1 rather against them, you're not gonna kill them. Usually most of the time you're not going to be able to do that. And I can understand that. So when it comes to something like ranked, it is a very good question to see. I think it will shuffle people out into their correct ranks over time. Balancing will 100% be an issue, but at the end of the day, yes, there are going to be environmental factors within the game that kind of reduce that skill gap, but those environmental factors cannot impact the mental skill gap, if you will, in terms of if you are one of the highest tier players, you are thinking 3 steps ahead. You are aware of your surroundings. You're more aware of your mini map. You are just more aware and have better decision making than the regular player. And over time, I think that will bear itself out in how ranked plays. But I do think there's probably going to be some pain points when that gets implemented.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to think about with that, and then we'll move on topics, is just like, hey, overall rank's going to work regardless of how they build it. Like, they're going to build it good enough to where people are going to be fully broken out into some sort of a tier. So the question is, how minuscule can you get with that? And the answer with this map in this game, probably not very minuscule. So if you compare like I don't know what these ranks are going to be, the Masters player versus a silver or gold or a platinum player or diamond or whatever, like there will be differences on paper between all of those, but it's going to be very, very difficult to determine who is a plat 1 player versus a plat 4 player, or who is a diamond 2 player versus maybe like a Masters 1 player. Like those delineations are going to be nearly impossible just because of the there's a lot of RNG in this game in comparison, especially with the
and how
TPK as
much
low as it is.
I wonder how much of that could be weighted in terms of individual performance, in terms of your damage, your kills.
Yeah, right.
Are they gonna if it's solos ranked versus not solos ranked? I do think that there are ways for individual player stats to help kind of influence those ranking increases and decreases as well, which might help make things feel a little bit more fair. Because even if you feel like something frustrating happened as a really good player, you might be dying with 15 kills and, I don't know, 10,000 damage. That should be weighted differently than the guy who maybe you were their first kill and they have 500 damage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you're just stealing kills from your teammates, is that going to be reflected by a certain point value in comparison to somebody that does a majority of the work? Yeah, and that's something that hopefully the people behind the scenes are thinking about and taking care of. And from what I know, which is limited, but what I do know is that seems to be the case. People are really consciously thinking through some of these processes in the background. The question is, what will it end up looking like on paper? Who knows? We'll see. So yeah, that's ranked, which is exciting for sure. And I think a lot of people are going to really enjoy that. I know I'll enjoy that. Like, again, there's the reason battle royales have taken off the way they have is because there's stakes to every game. It doesn't feel just like a casual walk in the park every single time, because there's kind of stakes involved the entire time. There's a story throughout the entirety of the map that leads to one person or one team winning. Ranked is going to do a lot of the same, is that there's going to be more stakes involved. You're going to lose whatever it's called, RP or what have you, or you're going to gain it. And that's kind of that kind of like dopamine hit by winning and gaining is a big deal. So excited to see ranked. But something that I am way more excited about, Katie, and again, you're going to have to cut me off and maybe ask questions or something, because I'm going to ramble about this next topic as much as humanly possible, and no one else cares about this probably as much as I do, it feels like. Customs are back. Round of applause. I think I have an applause button.
Everyone cares. Side note, I will say, I think everybody cares that customs are back.
I've got an applause button. Okay. Customs are back, Katie, and this is a huge deal. There's another thing that's an even bigger deal, but customs are back. Now, one, something worth remembering. Wow, this applause goes on for a long time. Can you please stop?
You said you were going to talk for a long time, so it's
true.
all good.
One thing that's important to remember and note is that customs were taken out of Caldera about like halfway through its life cycle and then never came back. Like they just left. In any big customs tournament that happened was all Activision Blizzard based, and they did what's called whitelisting. And it's not like a negative whitelisting. It's basically saying, hey, if you're going to play in this tournament, we'll put you into a public lobby, but all the players that are in the tournament are in that one lobby. We're whitelisting you to join one specific lobby. It's customs without using the customs UI because it was broken and not working. Simple as that. So customs are here finally. Honestly, earlier than I predicted. Like, I think you and I had a conversation, or I don't remember who I was talking to, but they were like, when do you think customs gets added? I was like, not till March for sure. And supposedly maybe they were supposed to be added early and they got delayed to get fixed. I don't know. But they're here and they seemingly work decent. like better than they did in the past.
There was already a Twitter tournament.
Yep.
The first customs Twitter tournament for Miss Know-It-All last night.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I kind of wanted to walk through, because in the past with customs, there was always there just was always this customs is broken. How are we going to work around it and accommodate, right? And so I asked the host, shout out to Miss Know-It-All. She's hosted like hundreds upon hundreds of tournaments at this point. Most of them buy-in tournaments on Twitter, and she always hosts like 2v2s, especially because customs has been gone for so long. But she paired up with Omit, and they put together a customs tournament last night that seemingly went pretty well. Now, there's definitely some issues, and I'm going to read through my DMs. I won't show this on screen just because it's a DM, but I'll read through some of these DMs to kind of talk about it. Number one, the first thing that she mentioned, lobby accessibility is amazing because there's lobby codes. No longer are the ages of having to have the host, added to a friends list that may or may not be working and trying to join off of them and trying to prevent other people from joining. Now it's as simple as hide your screen and you're given a lobby code in Discord that you type in and you join. Is this revolutionary? No. This is something that has been in every custom lobby, acquiring game there is, but it finally is new to Warzone, so it's revolutionary to us, right? A really big deal, and it also will speed up that downtime between lobbies that was so detrimental to a lot of custom
And that, oh
lobby
my gosh,
tourneys.
the pain points of the lobby downtime was felt by everybody in those tournaments throughout the history of Warzone. So I agree. I
Yeah.
think revolutionary, no, but things don't always have to be revolutionary. If it
Yeah.
works and it's effective, add it, and that's what they
Yeah,
did.
that's very, very true. Now there were some questions around can shadow ban players, which are players that have their accounts currently being looked at for cheating. Can shadow ban players join custom lobbies? The answer is no, not off of the lobby code, but they can off of an invite. Miss Nodal called it Ubering somebody to the lobby. When you get in a party with the host first, and then once they start the game, you're Ubered in, you're brought into the custom lobby. So that's one way to work around that. And again, that's the classic story of custom lobbies. It's what can we work around to make this work. Now there's a glitch sometimes when you start the customs. It kicks people out of their teams, and it sometimes creates, even if you're in the trios playlist, a full squad of 4 people, which is chaotic. But no idea how that actually happens, because it's supposed to be trios, but that's one thing. Or it puts some people like alone, for instance. And for the wrong teams, apparently they had people land together and then switch teams. So apparently that idea that this is like a concept and a feature in Warzone is that you can like squad up with somebody else. Apparently you can like do that in custom. So they'll like land together, like trade players, and then run away from each other, and then
They'll
they
be like,
actually
30
play.
seconds, don't shoot us, bye.
There needs to be like a clock on, like nobody can fight for the first 60 to 90 seconds of the game or something. This sounds chaos, but the fact that the custom lobbies are working, by the way, is a big deal. So at least we're there. There's a couple issues about ping with people like overseas. The big points, oftentimes in customs, there were things that were different than pubs. Pubs, heavy choppers are disabled because there's like bugs associated with them. In customs, there are heavy choppers, which are the ones you can like free walk around in the back of, and they're giant. Those are in the game. There's no redeploy, not really balloons. I think they're called redeploy drones or something like that. They're not in customs, and I believe those just got added to pubs, or they should be soon. Overall, she said, if you're not across seas, the servers actually felt fantastic. There wasn't that kind of jittering and stuttering that actually got the customs shut off from Caldera. That was the major issue. And then competitive wise, and this is kind of a big talking point about customs, is how is customs going to feel from a comp standpoint? It feels really good, apparently, and we both knew this, to shoot back against people that are good, right? You're playing against these people that you know on the timeline. But the TTK being as fast as it is, and they didn't ban any weapons, which is a whole nother talking point, but like with it being as fast as it is, like one tiniest wrong shoulder peak step and an LMG is going to melt you down before you can react. So customs are going to be bizarre with the way they play, with how insanely strategic you have to be in order to pull off rotations and not be killed with the minuscule of cover that you don't have for 15 seconds.
I think people are going to be significantly more hesitant and slow in how they play. And we've discussed that a million times, though. Is this going to incentivize more late game play? Do you want to try and, again, maybe get some of those kills early on when people don't have their loadouts, aren't fully kitted out with something like an LMG, and then just wait to try and get that placement later on, if that's how you're doing it, with a mix of kills and placement points? But no, I think it's a great point, because if snipers are strong, if LMGs are so strong, and there's a lot of open space on this map, you're going to have to be extremely mindful of where you are, where you plan on going. These teams are going to have to be thinking multiple steps ahead, which I know most of them do, but you can't at this point just hope that you can run across an open field toward late game and not have someone, especially if they are the same caliber as you, find that and take you out for it. So I agree. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, but I love that we can say that at all, that we do get to see how it plays out now, because you have to hope that this revitalizes the scene, that not only maybe on Activision's side, but on TO's side as well, that this gives them that incentive and that reason to re-engage with actual Warzone 2 tournaments, which we've just simply had almost none of. I really hope that's what we see. I know that a lot of places like eFuse especially, they do a great job with all their kind of fun, quirky concepts for custom tournaments.
Yep.
Boom's another major player in that game. And I think that they've kind of been itching for that as well, kind of waiting for this moment with customs to happen. So now it's here. I mean, I know for us, we've been missing casting Warzone. So I really am hoping that this kind of kickstarts a lot of potential, I guess, resurgence, if you will, not just the island, but resurgence in the tournament scene.
Yeah, and again, that's another big talking point I want to get into is about those tournaments and something else that was mentioned in the patch notes. But the other thing is, like, a lot of competitors are really excited about customs. Obviously, there's more tournaments coming, which means there's more events to be played, especially non-buy-in or Twitter tournaments. But the other thing is, like, if we look at the customs that happened last night, Katie, it's like, you look at the highest Warzone earnings. I've got my website, warzoneearnings.com. You can check out, like, all of the players in Warzone basically ever and how much money they've earned in the game on which map. It's pretty cool. Actually, I think I could show it on screen for a second. Yeah, here we go. So I've got it tabbed right now. The filter is Al Mazrah only. Okay. And so you've got Hisoka at $51,000 earned on this map already. And then so on and so forth, all the way down to even just 15th at Clutch Belk, 10K. But the winner of customs last night against a lot of these players, by the way, was, I think it was, no, it was Oki. Oh, I just leaked DMs. That's fine.
It was Disrupt, Wiz, and Oki.
Yeah, I'm not showing anything.
One Miss Know-It-All's first Twitter custom.
So yeah, she sent it over to me. This is crazy. I'm leaking DMs on main here, but it works. It was Disrupt. Yeah, like you said, AB Wiz and Oki. Now here's the crazy part about this. Let's look at Disrupt. He's got 2 technically. 0 earned on this map on that one, and let me double check his other. $675 earned on this map. Okay, then we go to Oki. $75 earned on this map. Like, these players have not been either playing or winning 2v2s the entirety of this map being out. We open up customs, Katie, brand new people winning. Who got second? We'll leak DMs again. Braxton, Tyranix, and Empathy Trick. This is Brimponix, if you guys remember, from World Series of Warzone, who I believe got 3rd overall from the tournament, which was customs, and they're back winning. Let's do the exact same thing. We go to Braxton on this map, $513. I mean, these players are all insane, but they are not winning or playing mostly 2v2s because they don't enjoy them. They come out on customs and they're winning and they're doing fantastic. So shout out to all of our customs players. There's a whole group of people, competitors, that love playing competitive tournaments against other competitive players and not against PUBG players, and they're going to thrive. So excited for the competitors as well. It's kind of a fun talking point about who's good in customs, who's good in 2v2s, and who's good at theoretically both. So excited about that. Excited to see more tournaments coming down the line. But Katie, I think it's worth mentioning and kind of going into this other big exciting tease that happened in the patch notes. And this will go alongside what you were mentioning about hopefully more tournaments coming, as we'll have a larger discussion around this. But it is official and public that a spectator and or also called a caster mode is coming to Warzone for the first time ever for customs, which is like hallelujah. The sunshine beam is falling out of the sky on my head. How excited I am, because it's something that I've been, I mean, you can scroll through my Twitter, Grandmaster Gojj on Twitter. You'll see me talk about it probably once a week for the last 3 years.
I mean, as we should though, like when you, again, this is also an ode back to many other episodes of the Bot Lobby podcast that we've talked about. Things like sponsors for tournaments, right? For the main broadcast. The main broadcast, up until potentially now with the spectator mode at least being teased, they have not had a lot of tangible, unique benefits for the viewer that gives the viewer a reason to be in that main broadcast. Unless you just really want to hear the deep insights from Gojj and myself or other casters, which you should because we're great. Why would you stay there when you could just head on over to your favorite streamers? So you might pop in to see the graphics for the leaderboards and what might be going on, so on and so forth, but there was no retention reasons for you to stay. Now, when you have something like a spectator mode, ideally, that's going to give the main broadcast a unique incentive for a different and better and improved viewing experience for everyone and for the casters as well. Not only does it allow us to do our jobs better, but it gives those viewers, again, a reason to be in the channel, but also a reason to get additional information they never would have had. So I'm really, really excited from that point. Hopefully, again, it compounds within the revitalization of tournaments, better sponsor opportunities, so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's a perfect summary for my ramblings that's about to happen, because I put out this long Twitter thread that only the passionate saw or liked, Katie, and I'm going to pull it up on main here, because in this Twitter thread, the number one thing I said, and this was the take, was that Season 2 update sharing that a spectator mode coming for customs is the biggest update out of all of the changes we've mentioned. A hot take, and probably, biased to some degree, given that I'm also a caster, but let's kind of talk through each step of why this is so important. You said a lot of it in a summary, and we can kind of go into detail. Number one, Customs has consistently been the preferred tournament format by any large production company, as well as Activision Blizzard, for those obvious reasons that you've mentioned. Number one, it's way faster than a 2v2. 2v2s on average last like 8 hours if they're done with like a double elimination, BO3 in the winner's bracket, and BO1 in the loser's bracket. If you go BO3 in the loser's bracket, that John's 12 hours. Just insanely long. And with customs, you can control the length of the event. And that's the super important part. You can actually go into a broadcast saying, this event will last 3 to 3.5 hours. Not, this could last 8 or this could last 16. We don't know, right? So it's a huge, huge point why customs are so important. Also, number two, there's usually no hackers unless you're doing like an open entry tournament. Sometimes they happen, but in theory, there should be no hackers, which you can't assure ever in pubs. There's real storylines through customs because you're playing against the same competition every time. It's not a different public lobby every time. And then that main broadcast having larger value. Even without a spectator mode, a main broadcast for customs is going to be much more valuable because you're hopping between different viewpoints from their Twitch or YouTube feeds or Facebook feeds. Whereas if you're just watching one streamer, you can only see their perspective. So that's why customs are important. But with the return of customs, we'll see the return of those larger tournaments. Blah, blah, blah. You'll see, the dip. Outside sponsors want to dip into Warzone, but it's not really been a value add just based on the fact that overall views are dipping and things like that. And the main broadcast is where they get most of their sponsor support, which isn't insane viewership. Usually main broadcast from a good tournament organizer can be like 2,000 to 3,000 and might be artificially, bumped with an embed up to like 8,000 or so. But what's important about the spectator is the increased value monetarily that the main broadcast will now have. Once the spectating mode drops, the produced main broadcast has something that no other channel can or will have, which is that power of information. On the main broadcast, you're going to be able to see, just like a spectator mode in any other game, like Apex or Fortnite or otherwise, you're going to be able to see multiple teams. You're going to be able to see players through walls. You're going to be able to do hopefully a drone overview shot showing all the teams in the area. You're going to be able to pull up the map and see where all the teams dropped. So much information at just the tip of the tongue for the casters to break down and create real storylines. Side note, I think this will also separate good casters from great casters, but that's another point. But there's way more value. And when value increases on main broadcasts and viewers recognize it, viewers will flock. So now we're talking about what happens when we start getting a main broadcast that's up to 5 digits in overall viewership. 10,000 plus. That's a huge, huge selling point for sponsors. And they're going to see not only Activision Blizzard do more events with those numbers in mind, but mostly other sponsors willing to dip into the competitive scene because there's way more pull, sponsor reads, ads, videos that they can throw on main broadcasts that are actually going to be valuable because there'll be actual people watching, which is the important part. So excited about it for us, Katie, as casters, to be able to tell real storylines and have a lot of fun on broadcast and provide real value to the viewers, but also really excited about it because that means sponsors hopefully will be flocking to Warzone much more aggressively.
And I think on top of that, might not be as major of a component, but I think when you have that spectator mode access, it also creates a lot more content opportunities, not only for the players participating in something, but also for the talent, the broadcasters around it who want, as you said, to give that more intellectual, in-depth, analytical approach to what you're seeing. Because how many times have we heard, "Oh, Warzone casting, what are you? You're really kind of just having a casual fireside chat while people run around and shoot people, right?"
Yeah.
Something like a spectator mode gives it not only, I think, the validity that it needs, because you can create those storylines and have more analytical approaches, but you can now make that content to prove what you're trying to say, right? You can get that overhead of where everyone landed. You can track statistics of where people like to go and how they like to play, and then show that in content. So I think, while not maybe as major of a piece, it is creating more in the ecosystem, and that's always a good thing, right? And on top of that, too, I think when you look at something like the addition of this spectator mode, this is pure, maybe just speculating on my point, but we've asked for a long time, how much does Activision actually care about the competitive arm of Warzone? Now, it might still be the same, which is not a big focal point for them. But when you add something like a spectator mode, yes, it could be purely for the fun aspect of tournaments they're going to put on, but you can ask the question, why would they put the time, resources, and dedication into even implementing a spectator mode if there wasn't a portion of it that was because of competitive? And what they might see for that, or potential for that in the future.
Yeah, I'm going to do the rare double back to the thread that I was talking about, Katie, because again, our brains are on this exact same wavelength here. Like, when we start talking about whether or not there could or theoretically will be a Warzone League, we don't have the answer to that. In all reality, probably not. However, you could see more tournaments coming that are more closer akin to a league that has multiple stages, etc. Just because we're seeing competitive support actually be, entered into the game. I think I saw somebody in YouTube say just a second ago, like, these are foundational features that we're just now getting 3 years later. And the last point here, obviously, that I make on this thread is that you kind of were one step closer to that league akin to an ALGS or an FNCS that we've kind of been yearning for. But there was a massive missed opportunity, warranted because nobody would have expected a pandemic. But when Warzone was at its peak, that this would have blown numbers out of the. I mean, ALGS would have been nothing compared to what a Warzone official league could have been if there was the support already built in. So better late than never, for sure. But now that we have it, what can we do with it, right? Is it going to bring new viewers back into the game? Is it going to bring new competitors back into the game? Is it going to bring new competitors in general? Like, will we see somebody like a Tfue or like a Daltouche or like a Nicewig or like these people that have like long histories in other titles come to Warzone when these big events start happening and potentially try to compete? Either for the money
even the players
or the
of
viewers.
old, like the Vic Stars
Sure.
of Warzone 1, a massive face and name in Warzone, who was putting on huge tournaments, participating. Can you get, as you said, those people reinterested in an actual tangible, not one-off way to start playing in Warzone tournaments? Now, Gojj, I don't know if you have anything else on this that you really want to hit on, because I do know that there's, speaking of tournaments, another one that you want to talk about. So I don't know if you have any final points or if you want to jump into that.
No, we can jump into that. I mean, I think the final point, if there is one, is simply, hey, spectator mode is massive for the game. If you are a fan of the competitive Warzone scene already, you're going to love this new age of competitive that is coming. The thing in the title that we were talking about, this is what I'm mentioning. Spectator mode and customs is the future of competitive Warzone. 2v2s will always have their place, but customs and a spectator mode via customs is going to be everything for the future of the competitiveness of this game. And if you want to see that, you want to play in tournaments, creator-led or otherwise, this is it. So we need to continually flood support their way. And when things drop like this, customs, spectator mode, the key thing we have to remember is we need constructive criticism. If everyone rages on the timeline always, we get nowhere. Instead, if we can provide some constructive criticism, do things like Miss Know It All was doing in my DMs, telling me all the different things that like has happened with them already, and maybe not that I am necessarily bending the ear of Activision, but that somebody can report to them and let them know what the community is saying, and then boom, we're gonna start seeing these hot fixes. Like that's what we need in order to like protect the sanctity of what theoretically is about to be the new age of Comp Warzone. So, with my ranting out of the way, Katie.
Let's get into another rant.
Speaking of Comp Warzone, yes, there was a recent LAN. Now, I'm excited for actual LANs with customs. A LAN where you're playing public lobbies isn't really a LAN. It's just people getting together and playing in the same room. But it provides some opportunities. What are we referring to? Katie, you can give us a very brief overview of this event and kind of what there was to be said about it, and then I'll take a breath and rant again.
Yeah, so I was not able to be there, but I was very excited to watch you go down and jump onto a LAN, something that I think you should be at all the time because you are incredibly talented. But yeah, it was the Mina Mendez and Florida Mutineers tournament. It was a 10K hosted in Florida. You had a lot of really big names. A lot of the top Warzone competitors that we know and love took the opportunity to go out there, which is an interesting note on its own because in peak Warzone or even in Caldera, I actually don't think, especially in peak Warzone, that a lot of these same people would have taken the time to fly out for a 10K. And that is just a testament to how tournament starved a lot of these players are, that they are going to do something like that, which is great, though, because, well, not great in the overall scheme of things, but it is great for Florida and Mina Mendez because they can get all these high caliber players in one room competing together. And I will speak from a viewer's POV and what I was seeing on Twitter. It seemed like there was a couple bumps in the road, maybe large bumps, a lot of them, not sure. But you guys managed to bring it together, execute on it. But I'd love to hear kind of from your on the ground perspective, what that experience was like.
Yeah, I've got another Twitter thread that I want to break down at some point. So yeah, this is a decent thread. I'll pull it up later. First and foremost, even gave it a little bit of a benefit of the doubt here, or a little bit of a boon. It was actually only $5,000 prize pool, so it is very small land. It was a 5K land. Was it not 10K? There was at one point a interested sponsor. I don't think that committed or something. That took it from 10 to 5.
That stuck in my brain and never left. Even more to my point that I was just saying, you would never get any of these players otherwise coming out to a 5K.
Well, let's also break this down, and this is where it gets crazy. If you don't understand the scene, this will sound like it literally doesn't make sense, because in all reality, it almost doesn't. This is a $5,000 tournament in person in Miami, right? And there are 7 countries represented. You've got players from Switzerland, players from France, players from the UK, and then even just in the US, you've got players flying to Miami from LA all the way across the country to play in a $5,000 LAN. That is nuts, okay? That doesn't even make sense, but it's A, start for content, but B, this is the really big point. This was an opportunity for a lot of players to prove themselves in person in a controlled environment, that they are who they say they are, and they are who they are online in person. I'm talking Unveiled. I'm even talking Hisoka, Sage, Shifty, some of our EU friends, Hadzi, Ulix, Gromalok, like all of these names that were there were people saying, hey, I've done things online that have caused either speculation or people saying, nah, that was like not that big of a tournament or what have you. Or I'm from the EU and I don't have as many opportunities. I'm coming to this land not to make money, because I think unless you are the winning team, and even there, maybe you're breaking even, no one's making money on this. Speaking about the orgs that come, of course, you're bringing like a Team Diverge team, like a Ahsoka and a Shifty. Maybe the orgs footed their bill. I don't know. But then you've got like Team like Omit, who we know and love. Like they've got more Warzone talent signed than anybody. Katie, they bring 3 teams to this. You're talking about making money. That's hedging your bets to make sure you lose money. Even if you get 1, 2, 3, you're barely, if any, coming out even. So like, all of that is context behind this event. This was a community event. Mina was the organizer, but she really was just the face. She worked with Mutineers to organize this event. So that's the setting, right? It's like, hey, this is here. This is here for people to prove themselves, but there's people flying from all over the world to participate. There was a lot of organizational issues behind the scenes, to put it lightly. I'll go ahead and pull up my Twitter thread of kind of what I talked about during the day of this event, because a lot of miscommunication was happening and people weren't really sure why we weren't going live. For reference, I got to the venue at around 10 a.m. Eastern time. We were supposed to go live around 1 p.m. Eastern time. I made this tweet at 2:53 p.m. Central, so that's 3:53 Eastern time. So we're almost 3 hours delayed at this point when I made this tweet. And I said, for those not seeing the LAN or whatever, these are the issues. And I try to put it as factual as possible without any opinion or bias. Accounts are being shadow banned. This is a known problem. Katie, you and I have talked about this problem on broadcast before, or not broadcast, but on podcast. People are being shadow banned for playing at a LAN center. We'll talk about why in a second. A variety of options have been tried. We tried so many options, and there's literally no success at all. So the issue, according to this thread, and this is what was happening at the time, the issue is with it being a third-party event on tight timelines, player accounts were not cleared before the event should this issue arise. So that's the number one problem. No accounts were cleared before the event started. So any suspicious activity on people's accounts was going to get flagged immediately. Number two, Activision did graciously try to offer support on a Saturday to alleviate the issue, but we didn't have any success with the Activision side because nobody was working on a Saturday. No, people don't just say they're some people work on Saturdays if you're people like us, but if you work in a corporate setting, you're not going into the office on a Saturday. And even if you work from home, you're probably not helping this small 5K LAN event on a Saturday. Simple as that. So we had a temporary solution that may work. We had to run part of the bracket off stream, and then we'll go live if there's a success. I think we end up going live, by the way, at 7 p.m. Central, so 8 p.m. Eastern. That's a 7-hour delay, by the way. This event is chaotic. And when I say tight timelines, this event had been kind of working in the background the entire time. And I did this big write-up about the event because I wanted people to be fully aware of what happened. And the big thing is that you will be shadow banned almost every single time if you play your account at a different setup than you play usually.
And this is something we've talked about actually in depth before, Gojj. I keep saying that because these are all things we're revisiting. But that's a massive issue. And I'll let you continue. But yeah, anytime you log into your account from a PC that's not your own PC, you are putting yourself at risk of being shadow banned.
And the problem is emphasized if you're logging into a PC that is not your PC with your account in a different state or probably a different country, right? That is cause for concern when you talk about the base kind of data points that Ricochet or otherwise is keeping track of. So that's point number one. Some of the local talent that were there, I see Guns World in the chat, in the Twitter chat, Guns, I don't think his account was shadow banned. There was a couple other local players, their accounts weren't shadow banned. So those were, I think Rayskis was the other one. Those accounts worked because they were playing the normal type of play that they usually do, and they were playing in generally the same area. So you might be saying, okay, you guys know this is going to be an issue. The accounts aren't cleared beforehand for whatever reason. Why don't you just play on the LAN centers accounts? Because they have to have accounts, right? The answer is yes. And technically, they are an approved Blizz Cafe, which is apparently a thing, right? So they have some special perms. And this is where a lot of the miscommunication happened. The cafe, the venue that we're at, and the production company that was at that venue, they've done a ton of multiplayer events there with Mutineers. And so they all thought, hey, we're hunky-dory, we're good, we're ready to rock and roll. The problem becomes, even if you're using the LAN center accounts there, these LAN center accounts are used by 13-year-old kids that come into the LAN center and drop 3 kills and on average get 12th place. And then all of a sudden, you've got Hisoka hopping on one of their accounts, dropping a 25 bomb and getting 3 wins in a row. Obviously, that's going to look sus because he's on a random account. Think about it this way. You're playing a 2v2, Mr. or Mrs. or otherwise competitor in the 2v2 scene. You're playing a 2v2. You get killed by somebody. You look up their stats on COD Tracker, if that is workable right now, and you see one day they have an average KD of 0.7. The next day, they have an average KD of 4. You think they are a cheater. So does the online system. It's that simple. So we're in a blender because you can't use the LAN center accounts. You can't use your own accounts because they're getting shadow banned. And then the final option, which is the option we went with, was let's make new accounts at the LAN center so they're geographically tied to the LAN center, so we won't have issues, and use those. Well, of course, if you make a brand new account and you drop 20 kills, it's the same concept. You're going to be flagged. It doesn't mean you're going to be full banned, but you will be shadow banned, which has been our issue the entire time. So long story short, this could have, of course, been avoided by a number of different options. The main one being more organizational structure beforehand by all of the parties involved. I, as a caster, stepped in and tried to do as much as possible. And in all reality, nearly ran the event while I was there and even a little bit beforehand. But the organizational structure fell apart when it was supposed to be a community event and it turned into this massive global event, right? So that's the short of the long of it, or whatever the phrase is. That was our issue, and because of that, we ended up basically finding, like, I think there was like 12 accounts that worked. Some LAN center accounts, some of the local players' accounts, and we said nobody log out. You leave the account there, and all of our players in our bracket are going to cycle through those 12 accounts. So
you're in a carousel of players.
Oh yeah, we're moving Hisoka from this setup to then play on this setup, then play on this setup, and like we're just moving people around, shuffling them around like lunatics, because those accounts worked, and because the accounts weren't all leveled and didn't have all the guns leveled up, we had to basically run the entire tournament with ground loot only, or default loadouts. You can't create any custom loadouts. So then we had our hacker hunter friends on, or let's just say they're not friends, hacker hunter acquaintances on the timeline saying, this tournament is all cheaters. They all suck in LAN.
Can we call them acquaintances?
No,
can we call
people?
Them bad actors?
Yeah, bad actors. That's a better description. They're all saying, these people are cheating. They suck on LAN. No, they're dropping a 20 bomb on LAN with ground loot. You know how valuable grabbing a primary weapon in the first 30 seconds of the game is from your loadout from a buy station? Like, I mean, that's equivalent to like a 10 plus handicap. Like, anyways, so that was the whole breakdown of the event. Definitely some things to be learned from that, from those on the organizational side. From a self promo standpoint, like, to be honest, like, I think if Rafi and myself weren't there, I don't know if this event even happens. It did insane amount of stuff. I was there for like 20 hours at the venue. We ended up getting to the winners finals, watching the winners finals, which was some of the best Warzone competition ever. I've ever seen. It was so good. It was Sajin and Veiled versus Ahsoka and Shifty, so that's going to be a good 2v2. Some crazy plays, but that winners finals ended at 4 a.m. Eastern time, and we had to stop the tournament not because nobody wanted to keep playing. Everybody was super excited to be playing, but because Ahsoka had to catch a flight at 5:30. So
you gotta go.
They had to leave. They ran to the airport immediately after. So chaotic event. I think I ended up like later realizing my throat was hurting during that event, and I thought it was just a long day or whatever, and I ended up getting like super sick. So I think I had like strep throat or something. It was chaos, Katie.
Champion is basically what you're saying. I feel like this was an incredible monologue of all the reasons that you should be involved in everything, and I'm here for it. This was excellent promo. But I think something you pointed out I want to mention is all of those innocuous reasons why people were being shadow banned, which were entirely innocent, is another point to the bad actors in the scene who consistently and only take an uncharitable and negative interpretation of everything. That there are many innocent ways in which you can be flagged by the anti-cheat, you can get shadow banned. It's something, as you said, simply as sitting down at a LAN center and logging into your account, or maybe you get shadow banned there, so you have to use this other account, but then you're flagged because you're just way better than the other people who played on it. Those are all innocent things that are not indicative of someone cheating. If anything, I would take away the broader point of that, which is a lot of these people who have been accused in the past, if you can show up to a LAN in non-ideal situations, especially, then you are showcasing the fact that whether you're on your account or not, whether you're on your favorite setup or not, whether you're totally comfortable with the situation or not, you're still able to drop those numbers and compete effectively to help bolster the credibility behind your name. So if anything, a lot of bumps in the road. You put in a ton of work. Rafi put in a ton of work. I know it could have been smoother, but at the end it was executed upon. I would walk away from that LAN looking at some of these players and saying you have even more credibility than you did coming in. Bad actors aside, who I think kind of consistently want to paint this negative narrative for their own benefit.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It was something that I mentioned too. I think the final three teams, the winners finals, or no, the losers finals and then the grand finals are going to be played I think on stream at some point. I think next week or something like that. But the final point I made was that very thing. Like, these people that made it to the very end against really good competition, despite all odds, in the marathon that was this tournament, like, they proved themselves, and they earned my respect, and they hopefully have earned a lot of people's respect on the timeline. Specifically in Veiled, he was the big one. Like, he has won so many events and never went to lands. It was this big sticking point with people of like, Veiled is cheating, Veiled's cheating, Veiled's cheating, can't perform on land. Comes to land, and I'm not gonna lie, dude was putting everybody in his bag and carrying them to the finish line or destroying them along the way. Like, it was impressive how well Veiled played, especially when we got to hour 16 of this tournament, and he was still 1v3ing on a map that 1v3s are insanely hard. Shout out to Gromalok too, an EU talent, flew across the world to be here. Did fantastic, is in the losers finals going up against Ahsoka and Shifty, playing with Ulix. A relatively unknown player globally, but on the EU side, pretty strong as well. Yeah, they all played fantastic. Really showed they had. There were some others that didn't quite make the money. I think fourth place was Panda, coming from Mexico, playing with Hadzi Jr., who also is from the UK. They played amazing all tournament and just came up short at the last kind of line. But yeah, definitely a lot to be learned from this event. It goes to show that organizational structure is everything, and if you don't take care of the little details, things are going to go awry, especially when it comes to land. So
yeah, but I mean, I think at the end of the day, hopefully, while it wasn't perfect in a lot of ways, it can be maybe a first step in seeing even more of these lands that are occurring again with the revitalization, the spectator mode, customs, etc. Maybe that's going to continue to boost interest in kind of getting things back on track for where we had hoped they'd be at the beginning of Warzone 2. But hey, better late than never if we can start doing it right now. Do we want to move on to kind of one of the next things that really as we get toward the close here, we've talked about a lot of the very major kind of news points. But what's also interesting is what we've seen with Scummin and Rated. So Rated was previously on 100 Thieves. He was one of their Warzone content creators and players. Recently Rated alongside Tommy were both let go from 100T, I believe, chose not to renew. However, that ended up working out. We actually saw a decent amount of orgs kind of doing same things. They just weren't really expanding, weren't really wanting to renew. Saw it happen with Florida as well, I think. LG being the standout there that picked up a whole bunch of Warzone players.
Yep.
Kind of being the only one in that ecosystem while everyone else was not renewing or maybe not picking up. LG said, we're going to grab a whole bunch of people right now. But Scummin and Rated have joined Native Gaming. And Native Gaming, I have their About Us pulled up. I was unfamiliar. But Native Gaming's very, very new org. It was established in 2022. And I think if you take a look at their Twitter as well, it gives kind of a good little brief in their bio that they are founded by Indigenous owners. It says Native Gaming hopes to bring the culture of First Nations to esports community. So very brand new org, which is interesting. We'll see how they fare. I think this is a tough time to be a new org, considering you're seeing things like United going under, and with potential recession and slowing of economy, there have been a lot of talks about what orgs are going to be able to survive. So I wish them the best of luck. But they sign Rated and Scummin, which I think is interesting, because I know especially Scummin for a long time has been looking for a new home, looking for a home. I don't think he's ever been a part of an org, or if he was, it was a long time ago and not a tier 1 org. But it's an interesting pickup to me, because I asked the question, were there tier 1 orgs that were not interested? I know for a fact that Scummin was talking over the last year or so with multiple tier 1 orgs, Rated again coming from 100T. So is it a broader testament to the ecosystem that outside of LG, tier 1 orgs aren't interested in picking up anyone right now? Or perhaps Native Gaming has a lot going on that made them extremely interesting and appealing for Scummin and Rated, because again, I don't know the back end of it and I don't know a lot about Native Gaming, but it's an interesting pickup. I'm curious to see where it goes and what your thoughts are on it, Coach.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a good breakdown, and they actually have a very well done video here. You can see I'm kind of playing it on screen. You guys can go watch it. Just go to Native Gaming's Twitter. You guys can see it on screen. If you're watching it, if you're on podcast, it's just at Native Gaming on Twitter. I am somebody that prides myself on knowing everything there is to know about Warzone players and the orgs that are represented in the Warzone scene. I've never even heard of Native Gaming. That's the crazy part, is like maybe offhandedly at one point, I maybe had heard the name. But they just picked up two of the best Warzone players in the game, especially in Caldera. Scummin was at the top. If you just literally go to Warzone earnings, let's just unclick everything, filter everything. Where are they at? Rated 6th overall ever. Scummin should be 14th overall ever. And then you do Caldera, and Scummin's right here in 9th overall in Caldera. Mm-hmm. Now, what's nuts is that Scummin's at 9th overall, by the way, at 52k in Caldera, and Al Mazrah Hisoka's already there after 3 months, but it is what it is. Anyways, but you see rated here 8th overall on Al Mazrah. Scummin is top 12. I mean, these are some of the best Warzone talent in the game getting picked up by for lack of, and this is my bias again, but like, I don't know them. Like, I don't know who that is, right? I mean, same can be said for people outside of the comp scene for like, who is Omit, who is Team Diverge, like these types of orgs that are all like on the smaller side. I can't imagine this was a cheap pickup. Like, they're probably paying them something. Both of their streams do fairly well. So a very interesting pickup. Very interested to see where they go with this. Do they pick up more talent? It looks like they've got Halo, Apex, League of Legends. They do some content. So like seemingly a fairly like successful to some degree in growing org. So excited to see if maybe this is the start of their entry into Warzone. I'll drop them a follow on main.
Interesting.
Or otherwise, but
I just noticed this as well. So there is a broadcast talent named Ahad, who I've actually worked with on Game Changers events in Valorant, that I noticed in the response to their tweet announcing Scummin and Rated had said welcome to them. And I took a look in late November of 2022, Ahad joined Native Gaming. So it seems like they are doing a pretty aggressive push to get into this space with notable pickups. So that actually makes me excited, because I think more competition in the T2 ecosystem, picking up these players, picking up broadcast talent, whatever it may be. I want to see people coming in. Yes, you can ask about the tier 1 side of things and the implications therein. But at the end of the day, if you have new orgs coming in, new orgs looking at Warzone and in general, kind of the esports scene, wanting to be a part of it, wanting to grow in it, that's good news, at least to me.
Yeah, and I mean, when you start talking about those T1 orgs, you mentioned it before, I'll mention it again, like LG is the only org, only one, besides Omit and Team Diverge and apparently Native Gaming. LG is the only, what I would call a more tier 1 or notable org that is picking up Warzone talent. Everybody else, their contracts are lapsing and they're leaving. We've got some more examples of that in a second. So LG's knows something, right, from a content standpoint, or maybe they want something to be the case. And then you've got Native Gaming trying to jump in, and you've got the Team Diverge and the Omit that are still hedging their bets on Warzone. What's interesting, though, about this, Katie, and this is what I always go back to, and this is where I'll end with this point, and we can talk about our last couple points here in the Shitter's Digest, is when you start thinking about people to sign from an org perspective, you're mostly looking at CCVs. There is a chance you might be going for their earnings paychecks in tournaments. I doubt it, though. Most orgs don't take a dime from earnings paychecks, or if they do, it's fairly minimal. The majority of the money that comes in and out of orgs comes through sponsorships and then some apparel. So the main one being sponsorships. How does that work? We've broken this down on podcast before. I won't go into the long version of this, but the short is, hey, a big sponsor comes in. Let's just use Coca-Cola, because I'm not trying to ostracize anybody. Coca-Cola comes in and says, I want to sponsor your org, not necessarily one specific streamer. The org says, hey, here's all of the streamers that you would be basically putting your promo onto. This is our bulk rate. The bulk rate comes through, the org decides, or it's already designated, how each of these streamers will be getting paid from said sponsorship, and it tells the different players, their content creators, saying, hey, put this brand on your stream, promote this stream, maybe do a sponsored stream for them directly, who knows. But regardless, the org is pitching all of their talent for a specific sponsor. That's why you see Coca-Cola or Porsche or whoever we have partnered with FaZe, not just Nick Merckx or not just, whoever. It's we have partnered with FaZe. That's how it works. So when you start thinking about people like Rated and Scummin, what do they bring to your overall org? CCVs maybe. But here's the problem. Neither of those two players make content. Their content is competing. Their content that brings in most of their viewers is competition, and we are in a competition drought right now for Warzone. So are they insanely marketable for tier 1 orgs? No, especially not in a gaming recession that we're in right now, right? So that's the interesting conversation that we have to like honestly have at all times, is like, who is marketable and who isn't. The people that make real content and get millions and generate millions of views on TikTok or YouTube or otherwise are way more valuable for a brand than these competitors, unless you're looking for a short-term deal during peak Warzone competition where your big competitors are driving massive views. That's the only way that they're going to be any sort of marketable. So speaking of that, Bobby Poff is a perfect example of somebody who can drive a lot of views on a live broadcast and that doesn't make a ton of content, or if they do, it's not as valuable as their live stream. Bobby, you and I both know very well, great guy. His stream has always done great numbers. Of course, views being down right now is not indicative of where he's been in the past or where he will be in the future, but was a part of Optic and just dropped this tweet, like I think it was yesterday, saying not only, Katie, is he not part of Optic anymore, but apparently it was based on contract negotiations, which is wild.
Yeah, they could not come to an acceptable agreement on either side. Usually that means money. That's always probably going to be a factor in it. It's the easiest guess to take as well. One side might have wanted more or less, whatever. They couldn't come to an agreement on it, or deliverables, or what have you. I do know Bobby lives in North Carolina, and he was flying out a lot to Texas to do content. That could have also potentially been a pain point for them. Maybe he wasn't willing to do as much travel. They wanted more, whatever it might have been. There's a couple parts that you could look to that might have been one of the reasons why this fell apart. But it also seems like both sides wanted it to work. And that's something we haven't seen. A lot of the people who've been let go from T1 orgs haven't been renewed, which means that there might have been interest on one side, not interest on another side, what have you. That wasn't the case here, at least based on Bobby's tweet. It was more, we wanted it to happen, we couldn't make it work. Bobby now looking to figure out where his new home is. But it'll be curious to see where he goes in this current environment. Granted,
if anywhere.
Right, if anywhere, because you look, Bobby has 76,000 subs on his YouTube. I was kind of trying to take a peek around. I don't use TikTok, so I can't comment. I can try and open it up and take a look right here. He has 226,000 followers on TikTok and almost 5 million likes, etc. So he does have that side content. Granted, it's not going to pull anywhere near the views or the impact, I would say, of what he gets on his Twitch. But that is going to be more valuable to someone than someone who only streams on Twitch, doesn't really have any other sources of CCV or viewership that they can make money and monetize off of. But I don't know where Bobby's gonna go. I was really surprised to see this. I don't know if maybe negotiations continue after this fact, whatever it might be, but it'd be very curious to see where he ends up.
Yeah, and in all reality, this podcast is not an industry talk podcast, but I could go into more and more long ramblings about like sponsors and partners and even orgs getting a lot smarter with the way they deal with their money, given that it's recession. And we're no longer kind of in this gaming age of speculative spending. Everybody has been spending so much money speculatively, meaning waiting and hoping for something into the future. I think a good example of that is the CDL. People are spending $25 million to get an org spot or a team spot, when in all reality, you're not getting $25 million of value. You are speculatively spending for the future, right? That's the idea. And a lot of big sponsored brands were doing a lot of the same in this gaming industry. And part of this recession has made people be a lot smarter with their money and pull out of a lot of that money. And I'm assuming it's something to do with that here too, especially because this contract in theory was grandfathered over from Envy when it was Envy before Optic. That deal is probably kaput at this point at the end of 2 years. And when starting to actually correspond with Optic itself, which is basically a new org, albeit they've combined, there probably either wasn't enough money or the terms weren't, satiating him enough, which is fair. So it ended up collapsing there. But Yeah.
Well, I think we've got a. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, yeah, I was gonna go to the same place you're going next to kind of finish off the podcast. There's a lot we can talk about in the industry. I think the final point before we get into that, and I'll let you lead us into the final topic, is there's layoffs across the board. We talked about this in January when we had our podcast. Talked about it in December, but it's even more so now. Layoffs across the board. Just
it's really tough.
Basically, if this is the best thing to think about. In the gaming industry as an entire whole, about 20% of the people that work in esports were laid off. Basically how it happened. I mean, even the org we were just talking about, LG, that just signed all of the Warzone talent, they literally like yesterday just let go of like, I don't know what actual percentage of their company, but they let go of a lot of people, especially like higher up people that like influence a lot of things that I even was working on, are gone. So like this is across the board. We talked about the 100 Thieves, groups that I work with, as all of this is happening, and it's continuing through this kind of recession. But this is what I would call not just a recession. This is more of like an equalization or stabilization point with people actually trying to break even on money. Like this is coming down to where we should be, not where we hope we go back to necessarily, which is really interesting now that speculative spending is taking a big hit.
Well, I think on top of that, you're also going to see an adjustment, and this has nothing to do with Warzone, so I'm really not going to talk about it for very long. But you're also going to see, I think, adjustments in player salaries in actual standardized and built out leagues, because a lot of them are overinflated to a massive degree, and that's going to be a majority of a lot of the spending that some of these orgs have to deal with. I think as people on the top level are being trimmed, as people in general overall are being laid off, that is going to be something eventually that gets looked at as a whole. We'll see what happens. Again, that doesn't really have anything to do with Warzone. But what does have to do with Warzone, and as we go from Scummin and Rated joining to Bobby and Optic parting ways, we have a player named Drew, a Warzone competitor who has a little over $20,000 in overall earnings. Drew officially quit. Warzone said, I'm done with it. Goodbye. It's been fun. I'll see you later. I don't know. I'm curious to know if we're going to see more of that kind of sentiment. Because I think, is 20,000 anywhere near the most anyone's earned? No, but is it a substantial chunk? And that means that you've competed a decent amount and you've done well enough for yourself to earn $20,000? Yes. So when you look at people like Drew, it is a curious question to say, are there going to be other people who follow in Drew's footsteps, say this isn't worth it and I will see you later? I think Drew's full tweet 16 hours ago was, I'm officially quitting Warzone. I'm just not good enough to be playing games that make me happy. I'm just going to be playing games that make me happy. Shout out to COD devs for making that happen. And kind of bowed out. I mentioned as well, my mental health can't handle Warzone anymore, and that's a good for you for doing what's best for you and your mental health. But it's sad to see someone kind of bowing out.
Yeah, great player, great competitor. Here's the thing: this is a use case for what's been happening the entirety of the last 3+ months, even into Caldera. There's been a lot of competitors, a lot of streamers in general that are bowing out of the game. And I'm hoping that season 2, and I'm hoping that Customs and Spectator and all this jazz is going to be bringing people back, or at the very least hemorrhaging, stopping the bleeding, if you will, the bleeding out of these Warzone competitors. Because at the end of the day, when you're a streamer, you're a content creator, it is a very hard job, but it's something you're in theory really enjoying. If you stop enjoying it, it becomes a very, very, very difficult job. And I know there's a lot of other difficult jobs out there outside of content creation, but there's something about content creation. When you start working on things you don't like, the entire time it's felt like a passion project, and no longer do you have a passion project. It's now your 9 to 5. But the problem is, it's so, a 9 to 5. Let's put it in this circumstance, because again, there's gonna be a lot of people on the timeline and on the internet. They're gonna be like, well, I'll do my 9 to 5 and I don't love it. It's not a passion project, but it's still my job. Like, get over it. Fair criticism, but at the same time, the issue is when you're doing content creation or streaming, you have to either pretend to be excited about something or actually be excited about said thing. So when you're having to fake it every single day, saying, I enjoy this, I like this, I want to do this, it will wear on you mentally. And anybody that is in a traditional job that has had to do the same thing, especially a public facing person, you will get burnt out so incredibly quickly.
White chimes, I am remiss for forgetting
I was
to
gonna bring it
include
up
this.
as well.
You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. Yeah, Stu Kawaki, who's been in competitive Warzone forever, has bowed out. Put out a twit longer on the 10th of February, so fairly recently, saying an indefinite break from streaming. He's returning to school in pursuit of becoming a nurse. There was a lot that led up to this, but he says one of the major things that influenced me was my mental health. Again, something that Drew mentioned as well, something that you are touching on. It is so hard to fake enjoyment, fake entertainment, fake happiness in front of an audience when you hate what you're doing every single day.
Yeah.
And Stu reached that point, and I wish him absolutely the best. I hate to see him leave competitive, leave streaming, but I know you have it pulled up, but I do very much so hope that he finds kind of that happiness, that revitalized everyday drive that he just wasn't getting anymore from the current ecosystem.
Yeah, and this is where it goes back. Like, Stu was not enjoying the game and not enjoying competing and not enjoying really anything with it. So if you have to fake it till you make it kind of thing, which he already made it. Let's be very clear. Like, Drew, again, we wish Drew the best. Stu is one step higher when it comes to overall quote unquote clout or streaming or earnings. Like, we'll take a look at those in a second. This is a massive loss for the competitive community. Stu was a mainstay and somebody that I've interacted with since the very beginning of Verdansk.
Right.
Positive and negatively, but one of the nicest people in the world in person, and just this is a really tough kind of pill to swallow for streamers and content creators out there. And again, another use case. These aren't the only people. There's plenty of others that we could talk about that we don't really have time to go through. But wanted to give a huge shout out to Stu because really was a mainstay in the community. He's going to be missed, but at the same time, I would speak for the larger community, we would hope that people take care of their mental health and take care of themselves beyond do stuff for other people. So just because I want to see Stu continue to compete because he's incredibly talented doesn't mean that's what's best for Stu. So we wish him the best and hope that everything goes well outside of gaming and streaming and outside of esports, where in theory he's going to be a lot more stable. So shout out to Stu.
Well,
but yeah.
I think to your part, and you were going to bring this up, but we talked about how Drew bowed out about 20K in overall earnings. Stu is bowing out with $163,000 in overall 54 events
it's a
placed.
good career.
Shout out, to WarzoneEarnings.com, Gojj's passion project. $163,000 in earnings is a very tippable amount, and a testament, as you said, to what a mainstay he was in the community. But look, I hope he takes that. He becomes a nurse, lives out his passion, does what he wants to do. But it really, it feels like one of the first kind of major Warzone retirements we've seen from one of those people that was in every single event, a name that you knew, that had storylines, that had arcs and sagas. Really feels like kind of one of the first to be a major name bowing out of the scene.
Yeah, no, I mean, top 12 overall earned in Caldera, you mentioned it, and then overall out of all maps ever inside the top 20 as well, 17. So definitely a big loss, but we miss Stu and wish him all the best. So and I'm sure we'll see a lot more people doing the same, but hopefully a lot of people coming back as well. So streaming, gaming, content creation, it's not for everybody, and maybe it's for some people for a certain amount of time and not forever. And I think that's probably should be the case, right?
Okay, I don't think people should look at that as a failure. I think it's so easy for people to look at something like what Stu's doing and be like, oh, you just couldn't make it. That's not true. No, you did something. You were very successful at it. No one makes six figures in something and wasn't successful at it. And then you said, this isn't for me anymore. This isn't what I want from my life. And I'm going to go do something else.
Yeah.
And again, wish him all the very, very best.
Well, I think that's all the topics we had today. And I'm going to be honest, folks that tuned in on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, wherever you found us, this was our first YouTube stream and it was awesome. Thank you. But I'm also just going to say, Katie, I'm just excited to be back. Like the fact that we had this much stuff to talk about. We're almost an hour and a half into this podcast, or I think without the intro, like an hour 10. I mean, that's a win in my book to just be back with stuff to talk about. hopefully that continues. We'll continue taking a look at the timeline and Shitter's Digest side, drama, that's always fun, but also just live updates on the competitive scene and the game in general. If you guys want to see or think or hear about anything that we haven't talked about, if you've got questions, comments, leave them down below. If you're like, hey, I think this person or this trio is going to take everyone down every single time in customs, drop them down in the comments down below. If you got to this point in the video, you're insane. So drop it down below. I want to see who you think the trio to beat will be on Al Mazrah, because it could be anyone. The competitive scene is shifted on its head, brand new people at the top, and customs is only going to continue to do that. So let us know what you think. But Katie, final words, final thoughts. Shout yourself out where people can find you, and then we'll close this thing out.
Yeah, Katie Bedford on Twitch, where we just wrapped up our awesome Slytherin playthrough, Hogwarts Legacy. Ton of fun. I know Gojj is a Gryffindor, called it before he even said it.
Sure.
So we might have to have beef over that. But World's Bedford on Twitter and Instagram, and just happy to be here doing my thing. And I agree, really, really happy to be back. Miss the podcast. Hopefully this is the beginning of a lot more content and a lot more consistency and things to be talking about.
Yeah, look, go watch Katie stream, because I don't stream anymore unless we're doing the podcast. So I think she's playing an evil playthrough of Harry
Evil
Potter,
Hufflepuff.
playing
I'm an evil Hufflepuff
as
right
me,
now.
which is pretty crazy. Really impressed with how she built me out into the game. Go take a look; you'll agree with me. But yeah, Grandmaster Gojj. I'm on all kinds of random streams. I think I've got like 30 planned broadcasts for the year already, which is nuts. So excited about those. You'll catch me on all kinds of random streams as well. Hopefully, casting with Katie for 90% of those, if not more. And follow me on Twitter. I do stuff about Warzone on Twitter and other things. Got Uno Mobile coming up. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, we have Uno
yeah,
on
Katie's gonna be joining me in the booth, which is gonna be sick. That's tomorrow. So anyways, shout out you guys for watching, showing some love to the Bot Lobby podcast. We've had a lot of recent comments, likes, and all of those things that we really appreciate. Please keep running that up on YouTube. We will keep streaming on YouTube. I will continue to restream probably on Twitch, just because that's where we always have been, but YouTube is where we're going to generate most of our live content. We'll be doing some shorts over there as well. But all of that to say, longest outro ever. Thanks for being here. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time. See ya.